Hello, and welcome to this session on transforming SUNY's digital student experience, where we will tell you how we consolidated the digital learning environment across 56 campuses in the SUNY system. My name is Kim Scalzo, and I'm the Senior Associate Provost for Digital Innovation and Academic Services here at SUNY System Administration. I am also one of the co-leads for our Digital Learning Environment project at SUNY.
And I am Tracey Schneider. I'm the Senior Manager for the Strategic Program Implementation Services team at D2L. And I serve as the sponsor here at D2L for the SUNY DLE implementation. So we've been working together for almost 2 years now and are glad to have this opportunity to reflect on what we've done and to share some of our experiences with you. So our agenda today, Kim's going to talk about who SUNY is and tell you about what they're trying to accomplish with this implementation. I'm going to talk about the difference between a system level implementation and a standard one. We'll both talk about the program structure, both on the SUNY and the D2L side. Kim's going to share some metrics to show the magnitude and complexity of what SUNY's doing. And then we're both going to share some lessons learned for all of you and also for us to think about future implementations like this.
Great. So SUNY is the public university system for the state of New York, and we have 64 campuses located across the state. We are known to be the largest, most complex, comprehensive university system in the US, and that is because we are one system that includes 4 different sectors of institutions. The sectors include doctoral granting institutions, comprehensive colleges, which are generally bachelor's and master's granting, technical colleges, which focus on more applied career track programs at the associate's and bachelor's level, and then community colleges, which generally provide associate level programs. Spread across all 4 sectors are a wide range of non-credit and micro-credential programs that students can take. We have just over 360,000 students enrolled in credit-bearing or degree-seeking programs, and we have just under 1.4 million enrollments in non-credit programs. We are a big system with a complex structure, wide range of learning activities, and diverse set of learners. So this is where we began. Leading up to the pandemic, we had a very decentralized, distributed environment where each campus operated their own instance of a learning management system with their own integrations, contracts, support, hosting solution, and security protocols. The user experience for both students and faculty varied significantly from one campus to another, and there was no sense that you were part of a coordinated system of higher education. As we approach the end of life for the LMS contract for our most of our campuses, we saw an opportunity to take a very different approach across the system. That is where the concept of the digital learning environment, or DLE, was conceived. We formed a combined team of system and campus representatives who assessed the landscape, and as they reflected on the experiences of students and faculty during COVID, it became clear that taking a more unified approach to the digital environment would be critical. Instead of each campus being responsible for selecting their own learning management system, managing it themselves, and setting it up to work with the students and faculty on their campus, we decided to think beyond the LMS to create an integrated digital learning environment designed to enhance the faculty and student user experience, achieve cost efficiencies, and maximize support available to campuses from several university-wide service providers. So with a digital learning environment, we are transitioning those individual campus LMS instances to one instance of Brightspace, which will have separate tenants for each campus where activity for students and faculty is connected through one login. While what we are doing represents significant change for SUNY, we believe it also represents the largest, most complex implementation of Brightspace, and we know that we are pushing the boundaries of the platform. This is where working closely with the D2L team has been critical. So let me tell you a little bit more about what we are doing with the DLE. For SUNY, the digital learning environment is a tightly integrated set of tools and technologies that brings together in one place all of the essential elements for a modern, robust, secure, and accessible platform to enable students and faculty to engage in teaching and learning in this digital era. With our implementation, we are taking advantage of the opportunity to unify the environment across SUNY for all students and faculty. A few ways in which that will happen include a common LMS that supports content creation and serves as the virtual door to the classroom for students to access content and learning activities. a shared learning object repository that will be available to faculty, common course templates to make it easier for faculty to develop courses based on best practices in instructional design, and available for face-to-face, online, hybrid, and high-flex instructional modes. We're also developing them for non-credit courses. There's an ability to integrate tools at both the system and the campus level, enabling us to reduce redundancy across the system and save licensing costs. Single sign-on for all faculty, staff, and students will make that interface and experience better. And a central architecture with common data structures, which will make aggregate data collection and reporting easier. So this is our goal. This is the goal statement that we set out for the project and that we've been sharing widely. With Brightspace as the foundation, we want to provide a comprehensive digital learning environment across the SUNY system for all students and faculty to use as they go from campus to campus. We hope to improve the student and faculty experience and make it easier for campuses to adhere to SUNY level standards and policies. We also expect campuses to see significant cost savings over time through reduced licensing costs and access to shared services support across the system. Before we began our implementation, our team identified a range of policies, standards, and guidance that we wanted to be able to align with, and they fell into two categories, academic and technical. As we have been going through the implementation, wherever we see an opportunity to align with one of these, we build that into our processes and work with campuses. For example, our training for faculty includes the elements of Brightspace that address EIT accessibility and has a required universal design for learning component to it. We have also created a set of course level templates that are based on the OSCAR rubric, which is SUNY's course level design framework. On the technical side, campuses must have implemented the SUNY Global ID, which connects students, faculty, and staff records across the system. And all campuses must have multi-factor authentication implemented at the campus level for the DLE. By putting these stakes in the ground and helping campuses to do this work as part of their implementation, we are helping all campuses to comply with these requirements more easily and consistently.
I think my thing is stuck there, sorry. So what is different about a system-wide implementation versus a standard implementation? First of all, the designs that are being made at a system level have a much bigger impact just in the sheer volume of people that need to adapt to the change. The system is doing this for a very specific reason and goals. It's important that everyone understands this from the beginning to help with change management aspects. So what are we trying to achieve? Is it to have a consistent, modern, mobile, accessible experience for students that can cross and roll across campuses seamlessly? Is it to reduce operational costs of running 54 campus learning management systems? Is it to consolidate data across the system to get better insights into graduation, adoption, retention metrics? Or maybe it's all of the above and more. It's important to know and understand our messaging on this very early and share this with our stakeholders. So transparency and leadership support is essential to successful transformational projects like this. The biggest technical effort is getting the system design and strategies all figured out before beginning any of the campus implementations. So many of the main administrative capabilities are assigned at the organization level in Brightspace. So we need to define things like the org structure to ensure it meets the needs of the reporting requirements. And we need to decide how much flexibility should be given to the campuses to manage on their own without impacting other campuses. Everyone wants to have a seat at the table, input into the design of the system. So how do we effectively get feedback from all of the stakeholders, but keep things progressively and making timely decisions? Everyone has a different way of delivering learning to their students and a different way of the faculty to do their work, different user journey requirements. How much change really needs to be introduced day one to support the overall system goals? How much flexibility does the platform allow for variances and different needs across the campus? And then each campus will use different third-party vendors. So can we consolidate licensing to save costs? Do the vendors even support multi-tenant environments? How do we ensure that the unique user, no matter what campus they come from, just to ensure that we have only one student record of learning? And then the sheer volume of bringing in 54 campuses courses into one system was huge. So we're talking in the magnitude of 360,000 courses so far. Plus, there's a lot of work to coordinate all of this, and the overall time commitment is significant to take on a project this size. So how were we successful with this large-scale implementation? At SUNY, well, we know that technology-enabled education creates opportunities for equity, increased access to learning, more personalization, and better outcomes. But to ensure that the technology that SUNY was investing in truly supports the goals of their organization and student success, we needed to ensure that not only was the technology being adopted, but it was being used in a way that encourages and empowers quality teaching and learning practices. So therefore, our LMS rollout needed to be done intentionally with an understanding of adoption, change management, and with a focus on their long-term success. So we wrapped a strategic program around the implementation to give more structure, more support, both technically and strategically, as well as more time in the system implementation, which allowed us to map out a more phased, controlled approach for the rollout. It was designed to provide additional guidance and deep technical support throughout and beyond a typical implementation period. We built out a governance structure that helped define our working relationship and the leadership structure to ensure that we had the right support at the right time from the system level leadership team, the campuses, as well as D2L leadership. Lines of communication become more critical in a large scale implementation like this to avoid any kind of issues or implied decisions. We defined flexible enablement plans, and SUNY did a really great job of providing different types of training options and lots of opportunities to deliver training to their stakeholders. And of course, we always want to be checking, validating, and making sure that we're meeting our success criteria, measuring feedback, and making changes as we learn from every phase of the implementation.
So in order to accomplish all of this change, we have been thinking very intentionally about how we do this in collaboration and partnership with key stakeholders and with an eye towards supporting the change management needed to be successful. The campuses are key stakeholders in all of this, and we have been working collaboratively with them from when we wrote the requirement of the RFP that led to the selection of Brightspace. We have continued to engage people in all roles at the campus level throughout the implementation, and will do so as we complete implementation and move into operational support. The icons you see along the bottom and on the right represent the university-wide service organizations who provide a range of academic, technical, training, and other supports to campuses today. They are all involved in the implementation, and their resources are being brought to bear to support the campuses throughout the implementation. Of course, D2L is also providing a great deal of implementation support, which Tracey outlined. So this slide represents the governance structure we have put into place to support the implementation on the SUNY side. It is entitled Intentional Project Structure because there was a great deal of intentionality in how we created it and how it has evolved. We began with 3 key groups that were formed at the very beginning and have remained at the core of the project. The steering committee sets the strategic parameters and resolves issues at the strategy level. They also ensure that we have the resources needed to be successful and serve as our leadership champions with the campuses. The core strategy team is leading the implementation at the system level, and that is where implementation decisions on the system-wide design get made. They also have been the lead on the high-level support for campus transition planning. This group met with D2L once we started engaging with them and to help ensure alignment of our plans with the D2L side of the implementation. The advisory team is our largest team with wide representation of campuses and system faculty and staff in every role you can think of. They provide input and feedback on the implementation planning when we need campus perspective and serve as communication champions to everyone at the campus level. These 3 teams have been supported by our communications team and by our contract team. The next set of teams were established to determine those academic and technical policies that we wanted to align with, and they were formed early in our implementation planning. Next, we formed the technical implementation work group and the campus implementation planning work group. And these 2 groups also intersected with the D2L implementation team, as it was necessary to make sure we had their expertise in the discussions and decisions these groups were recommending to the core strategy team. 2 offshoots of the campus implementation planning work group were the template creation sub work group and the training resources sub work group. Their charge was just as it reads. They were active early on and provided a great deal of help as campuses were trying to prepare faculty for the transition to Brightspace. And then lastly, we added 2 final teams, one for data strategy and one for EIT accessibility. These were only formed about a year ago and have provided focused effort in these 2 areas where we needed additional expertise that was outside the scope of the membership of the rest of the structure. They were also able to focus on specific deliverables that became interdependencies for the broader implementation.
On the D2L side, at the core, we have the strategic program team who's helping SUNY with everything from overall plans, schedules, configuring the system to meeting their needs, and mapping out how we'll work with each campus for the overall rollout strategy. We assign a program sponsor to connect with the SUNY leadership team on a regular cadence. We have a steering committee on our side that meets on a weekly basis internally, where we can bring up any issues, risks, help us remove any barriers, secure our resources, and help us make timely decisions on our side. We built out teams to support both the cohort group implementations as well as the individual campus-focused implementations. And we had various different work streams happening to support things like course migration, content management, integrations, change management, training, and data and reporting. And we always want to keep the operational team tightly aligned through the implementation, just to ensure that there's a smooth transition once implementation is complete. So the sales account team, the customer success manager, the technical account manager, our support team. And then SUNY also decided to go with the learning administration manager to offload some of the administration duties on their side. All in all, the large group of people on the D2L side is very similar structure to SUNY's side. So we were tightly aligned and delivering on parallel work streams seamlessly.
So this is the timeline that we laid out for implementation. It's about a 2.5-year project, which is very aggressive for all that we are doing. We spent about the first 5 to 6 months pre-planning on our own without D2L. And then that was followed by 6 to 7 months of work with D2L on the university-wide design. In truth, we probably needed more time for both of those. For the campus level implementation, we outlined 4 cohorts and allowed campuses to select their preferred cohort. This gave them some choice regarding when they would make the transition, which I think was appreciated. The timeline for each cohort was about a year, with time for an optional pilot built in, and most campuses did and are taking advantage of that pilot. I'll just say again that this was a very aggressive schedule and required a significant amount of time and dedicated effort in order to meet these deliverables. And this slide shows the campus breakdown for each of the cohorts. You can see that cohort 1 was very large, 30 campuses, which I do not necessarily recommend, but that was necessary for us and we made it happen. I think I also mentioned that campuses chose their cohorts, and we did not say no to anybody's preference. In hindsight, we might reconsider that decision. Today, we have cohorts 1 and 2 who have completed their initial implementation, which really means they are now in full production and will continue to expand functionality and usage of the Brightspace platform. Cohorts 3 and 4 are in between piloting and full production, and by fall, all SUNY campuses will be using Brightspace, the same LMS with a common look and feel and user interface. That is a huge milestone and a significant improvement for all SUNY students who may engage with the DLE at some point.
The timeline was pretty aggressive in the beginning. We had a lot of upfront planning and decisions that needed to be in place at the system level. So before engaging in the campus cohort rollout, building out all of our plans to get ready for the cohort implementations, as well as configuring the environment at the system level. We had begun the early cohort implementations before all of the system configurations and integrations were completed, which added a bit of stress and delays in our early cohorts. But when we actually started working with the cohorts, it was a partnership approach from the beginning. So D2L would come in and do our side of the implementation, and the DLE team was tightly aligned on helping us communicate certain decisions that were made and why. They had a lot of ownership in the actual implementation of the campuses with D2L. So it was really important for us to be doing this together. We did have cohorts starting implementation. At the same time, we were supporting some cohorts initial launch, and some cohorts were entering into full launch. So it's extremely important for us to be organized and have good support structures in place. It was a lot to manage in parallel, but I think we pulled it off pretty good. So having strong management practices was key to keeping things running smoothly and on track. One huge area was we had a lot of data to gather from each of the campuses. So we leaned on tools like Airtables. We had so many schedules to manage. We used tools where both organizations could own and update their own pieces. And then everyone understood the status of where we were at. And then we built automated dashboards based on those schedules to provide transparency to key resources that were easy to understand. So no one needed to know how to read a Gantt chart. We had defined communication channels to reduce the amount of times we needed to answer the same questions. We were storing questions and answers in central locations, which allowed people to go back and revisit them. We had group enablement sessions and office hours, which allowed for campuses to learn together, but also learn from each other. So all in all, I think the program was a well-oiled machine from the PM side of things once we got everything planned out.
So these are the current metrics that we're tracking in terms of implementation and usage across the system. Almost all campuses are in production now. We have 2 more to go. And we are also supporting some additional system level activities with their own tenants. We have over 360,000 total courses in the DLE, and that includes 75,000 that were brought over in bulk from previous LMSs. We have 435,000 accounts in the system, and this represents all students and more than half of our faculty and staff. 230,000 of those have active logins so far. And lastly, we are tracking all of the tools being integrated into the DLE and have received almost 1,000 requests from campuses for tool integrations, representing just over 200 unique tools. That means, of course, that there are duplicative requests for some tools from multiple campuses. All in all, big numbers and a lot of activity happening in that multi-tenant environment. So these are just some of the key benefits we wanted to call out based on where we are today. The first is, of course, cost savings for campuses, and that's happening in a few ways. We have reduced license costs for the campuses. Implementation costs for a tenant were less than that for a separate site or instance. And then the ability to provide shared services for things like training, end user technical support, and LMS administration support. We expect there will be more, but that's where those are the initial savings. We were able to implement training across the system for all campuses to utilize, and the training materials created could be used by any campus. So there were a lot of options and provided in a very cost-effective way. No one had to recreate anything, and we minimized duplication of effort. The modern user interface has been received with really positive feedback from students and faculty. Early surveys are telling us that they can find everything that they need to in their courses and are able to perform all the functions that they need to for their particular role. We are just starting to think through the implementation of our learning object repository, and that will provide some really great opportunities for sharing content, resources, and materials across individual campuses and also across the system. As we are looking at options with data, we already have visibility into data across the system that was previously not possible. And additionally, students and faculty have access to data on student progress that will help keep students on track and to know where they need help. And then finally, students and faculty who are working across multiple campuses log in once from any of their campuses and can see all of their courses, which is a huge benefit. So this is that student view, which represents SUNY as the system that it is and that we want it to be for our students. One login to access all of their courses. Previously, this was not possible. And this is the faculty view with a similar experience and also not possible previously. So 2 tremendous improvements. So we wanted to outline some of the challenges that we have encountered. I'll just start with, have we said that our timeline was aggressive? Well, it was. And that puts us and our campuses at a disadvantage to be able to really think through and plan for the university-wide design before we had campuses actually starting their pilots. We did not have much choice in the initial timeline due to contractual realities. So if you do have flexibility in your timeline, I would add about a year to the upfront planning and prep. 30 campuses was too many to start with. In hindsight, I wish we could have gone with 3 or 4 campuses who could have operated in both their old LMS and Brightspace at the same time to ease the pressure of the aggressive timeline and to enable us to learn some of those early lessons with a smaller number of campuses impacted. There were some technical challenges, and many of these were a result of the technical configuration designed by SUNY at the system level for the multi-tenancy. The first of those was our global ID, which was the mechanism for connecting student and faculty records across campuses. And that was not fully implemented when we began the initial planning for the project. It made sense in theory, but there were unknowns at the system level and some unknowns at the campus level that we had to work through with campuses and with real students and faculty. We implemented SUNY Federation for identity management, which was not hard, but needed to be in place, and not all campuses were fully implemented prior to the DLE implementation. Also, multi-factor authentication was not hard, but needed to be in place, and not all campuses were fully implemented with that prior to the implementation. For the SIS integration, we had code and process that needed to be created in a very fast time frame for the first cohort. So that was a little bumpy at first, but worked itself out and now is working smoothly. And the multi-tenancy in the way that SUNY was implementing and the functionality we wanted presented some new scenarios for D2L. That meant new workflows in some cases and created a list of items that represent enhancements we are asking D2L to make in the platform. With regard to third-party tool integrations, we had a very large volume to start. You saw the numbers. And campuses had varying existing contracts that we had to kind of navigate and work through. There was also very little documentation to demonstrate compliance with EIT accessibility and security requirements. That required a whole new work stream and a set of processes that we did not plan for and have had to stand up. And then, as Tracey mentioned, not all vendors understood the implications of multi-tenancy, so that we had to work through with them.
And I'll just add that we did not plan enough project management support for the campus implementations overall. So our vision was to do small group cohort style implementations to keep the costs down for SUNY and have the SUNY DLE own a large part of the rollout and enablement. But with our tight timelines and having so many cohorts all in implementation at the same time, it quickly became a lot of work to do in parallel. And then with 30 campuses in cohort 1, an aggressive timeline, the course migration load was significant. So as other cohorts came on board, that was compounded. There was some technical limitations that was slowing us down. So we ended up writing some scripts in the back end to grab the larger courses that were being pushed through and putting them off to the side while we pushed through the majority of the average size courses. And then we would circle back to the large courses at non-peak times to push them through the conversion service. So it ended up being quite a bit of manual effort in the back end. So I just want to take a minute to share what we loved about working with SUNY. So first of all, the people are amazing. Everyone we worked with day to day at the system level were incredibly easy to work with. So our meetings felt like more like having coffee with an old friend. So it was really a true partnership from the start. We were all very invested in ensuring that we were going to be successful with this program. And a huge part of the success was how much SUNY owned the messaging, the delivering that to the stakeholders. It's extremely important for people to understand the why behind the projects that we're doing. And we're asking people to take on a lot of work over and above their regular day jobs for most. So understanding the value of it just makes it a little bit easier for them. We set up a governance structure and we used it. It's one thing to document how we want things to work, but to ensure that we're leaning on it every day. It's tough sometimes, but there's a ton of value in that governance structure, and SUNY really, really embraced it. And then the SUNY team was very thorough and thoughtful when it came down to making decisions. They really did put the campus's interest first, and they weighed out all the options and chose the best path forward for everyone. When moving to a new LMS, it's often just moving from one system to another, and people don't spend enough time to think about opportunities for improvement along the way. I think SUNY did a really great job of recognizing these opportunities and implementing them where they could. So I'm really excited where this continuous change will keep improving year over year. So I just want to thank Kim and her team for a very fun, successful journey over the past couple of years.
And thank you, Tracey. I would like to share why it was so easy to work with D2L, not something that we always say about vendors. From the very beginning, it was clear that D2L was committed to SUNY's success. That was evident from everyone we interacted with, from the contract team to our account team, our implementation team, our customer success manager, all of the technical resources and the consulting engagement teams. It was clear to us that they were excited to work with SUNY, and they came to every meeting with a how can we help perspective. As someone who has studied partnerships and values collaboration, I really appreciate that the D2L team values partnership and collaboration as well. Every meeting and conversation, whether it was for planning or problem solving, is two-sided. All decisions have been joint decisions, and while they came with a playbook, so to speak, for implementation, the D2L team, they allowed for that to evolve and be adjusted where it was necessary for us and made sense for SUNY. Where we are today is reflective of the combined work of our teams who have worked very hard over the last 2 years as well as the shared responsibility we all feel for the success of this implementation. Part of the system implementation means that D2L has two customers, the system office and the campuses. That dynamic comes with some natural tensions, and D2L understands that, which makes it easier to manage communications and navigate around those tensions when they arise. At multiple points along the way, we encountered issues we did not plan for, and in some cases, D2L was able to bring additional resources to the table to help us stay on schedule and meet the needs of our campuses. Going back to their commitment to our success, this is just one example of that. And anyone who understands the rules and requirements of procurement in the public sector knows that is not easy. We are bound by laws and regulations that are non-negotiable and very different from our colleagues in the private sector. The D2L team understands that and respects that, which makes it easier to navigate around some of those challenges that we faced along the way. And then finally, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the expertise, professionalism, and competence of the D2L team supporting us in this implementation. They helped us to embrace the change we were going for and supported us in navigating some challenging decisions. Their understanding of this work and the impact it has on actual campuses, faculty, and students is based on their collective experience working with higher education, and that has been invaluable. This is not just based on my or my team's experience, but what I hear from campus colleagues who interact with the D2L team on a regular basis. As we approach the final stage of the fourth cohort going through implementation, I can honestly say that we would not be where we are without the support of the D2L team. We have much more work to do, and we are well positioned to do that together.
All right. So when we do this again, how will we do things differently? So we're gonna plan our overlapping cohorts in a more manageable, controlled manner. Begin with fewer in cohort 1 to allow us to learn before rolling out for the masses. Consider doing a small pilot ahead of doing cohort implementations. Identify those third-party vendors that we may need to work with a little closer and earlier. And we definitely have a much better understanding of multi-tenant platform configurations at this large of scale now. So we've learned some best practices. And then finally, I'll just say that change management is definitely needed and needed much earlier on just to support this large of a rollout.
Great. And as we close, I just want to say thank you to Tracey for finding and pulling this quote. I think it embodies what we did. So we hope it has come through loud and clear. The partnership between SUNY and D2L has been so important to keeping everyone working towards the same goal, and we will keep charging forward. Thank you.
Thank you.